Hey everybody, Bradley tuning in, coming at you with a very exciting video, or at least it's exciting for me. There's been so many changes happening in the last week in Toronto real estate. The interest rates just went up, housing prices are up year over year, and as you saw in the title, I think renters are going to be doomed, and I'll share a little bit more about that shortly. All of this, I think, accumulates into one single end, which is to show you guys this massive opportunity that we have ahead of us, and I'm excited to bring that to you as well. If you guys have any comments, any reason to like these videos, please get involved. The more engagement we get, the further the post goes. If this is valuable, we want the whole world to hear it. And of course, if you're following us on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe. And any of you on Facebook, which is probably the majority, if you're seeing us here on Facebook Live, this is all posted through GTA Real Estate, so make sure you like that page if you haven't already. Let's get right into it. So I just wanted to talk about my main goal coming into this month is my next week, next Wednesday live, I want to talk about where the Toronto real estate market is. But I don't want to leave you guys hanging. I want to share that with you right now. Some of the little tidbits, I guess the Coles Notes, at least that's what we used to use in school. I don't know about you guys, but I want to give you the Coles Notes on what you're going to expect next week. And next week I'm going to dive deeper. I'm going to give you some more meat and potatoes, if you will. But what they're saying right now is the market year over year, looking at the numbers in August, we're seeing an increase of 3%, which is the first time year over year. Last month, we saw that number was actually a decrease year over year. So now we're starting to see that come back. And I'm actually starting to see some changes in my buyers starting to come back. People that were on the sidelines are saying, no more, we're back. And I want to dive into that next week. But just know that the numbers seem to be in favor of a market that's seeming to come back a little quicker than I even expected. But the big announcement that happened just 2 hours ago at 10 o'clock this morning, the government announced another interest rate hike of 0.25%. So that's 1% overall. So you can see that those variable mortgages are going to instantly increase. I think it was something in the neighborhood of like $80 a month in your payments. So there's going to be a real number, and we're going to dive into that next week. But I wanted to give those to you because it's definitely going to all play into this topic we have today. Although the economy is doing well, we've got this Canadian dollar topping out. There's a consequence that comes specifically to the renter, and I'll show you how that works in a second. So let me dive into what I wanted to talk about specifically in this video, which is about, I don't know if you guys have heard, but of course many of you heard about the rent control changes that happened earlier this year. Well, all part of that, the government's game plan was eventually to add what they just did this past Friday, which is to what's going on. Let me just make it plain and simple. The issue here is that a lot of landlords, this happens at the small time level, you get a couple properties are saying, you know what, we want to either rent it for more money or as a trade-off to a short-term rental, something like an Airbnb. The problem with all of this is you can't get that renter out for those reasons. So what they'll say is, hey, look, Mr. and Mrs. Renter, I'm going to move in myself or my kids or whoever, and therefore you need to get out. But then 2-3 months down the road, it's listed on Kijiji, and all of a sudden they've got another renter in there. So the government, as part of this plan, their game plan was to remove that, and they actually have. And they've actually given it some pretty serious teeth, and you guys probably saw this in the news if you haven't already. I'm going to give you the details, but I want to also share what I think the impact of that will be. So first off, they have one of two options. They can either give, this is the landlord, if the game plan is that they want to vacate the tenant in order to move into their property, they need to give them 1 month back. So they need to return a month of rent to them. So you're paying for your own house, which is crazy. Or alternatively, they can provide another similar comparable unit that they have. Where I see that being a challenge is this only applies to private properties. It doesn't apply to corporations. Corporations were never really challenged with this thing where I'm going to kick you out to move in. So it really is these small-time private investors. So my question to you is, how many private investors have multiple units available at a time and are able to offer that? So my suggestion is the majority of these circumstances are going to be leading to 1 month paying back to get that property. But the killer, even more than that, is they need to give 1 year's notice. So let's say you're a landlord and you've got a rental property, and for whatever reason you come into financial trouble and you need to remove them. You need that house. You need to tell them 1 year in advance. And I would suggest, I don't think that is practical. And of course it was meant to prevent this from happening, and all to protect the renter, right? All to protect the renter. But ultimately, why I say that they're doomed is the impact of what that's going to be. Let me tell you a little bit about what happened with the rent control changes. You remember I created this video not too long ago talking about the impact of how that's going to how everything is going to change once they do this. Yes, it prevents people from having their rents jacked up, but ultimately it leads to a decline in the number of rental units available in the GTA. And I'm anticipating that we're going to see the same thing happen here, okay? So this is the way I kind of slice it, if you will. So I think we're going to start to see people either backing out, I'm talking landlords, backing out of the rental altogether, but more likely than not, they're going to start to say, to hell with this, I'm going to do short-term rentals, something like an Airbnb, where I can at least not have this tenant power over me, but also still get a lot, actually more money on a monthly basis. So I think what we're going to start to see, in fact, I know we're going to start to see in the same way, we're going to start to see a decline in the number of rental suites available. Why is this important? Okay, this is to compound things that are already going on. And I want to give you an example of a client that I had in the last couple of weeks. I had a client who's working downtown Toronto. Their family lives at a distance, so he wanted to rent in Toronto, downtown. So he put several offers. He's got a good job, great everything, credit, perfect, AAA tenant. And he put several offers in on these properties downtown. Ultimately, he even said, I'm willing to give 3 months up front. Just get me in the door because I'm desperate here. All of that didn't work. And what ended up happening is I've actually helped him purchase a condo now. All of the expenses for the month are actually going to be less if you consider the long-term cost of it. So he actually won in ownership. But it's all of this to say the rental market in downtown Toronto specifically, but across the board, is brutal right now. And I know a lot of people who watch these videos some of you are renters, and you're like, you know what, I've got a good rental and I'm fine. I've had clients that I've helped with rentals a couple years ago that are considering it again. And if you don't know for sure, ask someone who's trying to find a rental in the GTA and you'll realize just how difficult it is. It's bad. So I would argue that it's going to get worse. If we start to decrease these number of rental units, it's all going to go from bad to worse. And so let's move on from this. So I know that we're talking about these examples. We're talking about the shortage of supply. We're talking about a demand that's clearly high. But I want to talk about the specific opportunity that I see here. Let me lay out the facts for you one more time, okay? First off, interest rates just went up today, okay? Our interest rates went up 0.25%, so affordability is going to become a challenge, right, in the long term. Also, house prices, which we'll get into a little bit more next week, house prices are now seeming like they're going to go up, at least in the next few months. They're going to start to come the other way again. Again, an affordability issue compounded with the challenges of these lenders. They're just making them that much harder for first-time buyers. The first-time buyer is going to lose. So where are they going to go? They're going to go to affordable housing. They're going to go into rentals. So we're going to have this big influx of renters coming into the market, more than there even is now. Rent amount is going to increase. Sorry about that, just getting a call. The rent amount is going to increase just by sheer numbers, your supply and demand. The rent available units is going to decrease. So all of this is going to lead to a supply and demand that's really going to screw over the tenant. And although at the face value, it seems although these landlords are going to start to pull away, which in many cases they will, for those of us that stay in the game, and I don't know if many of you know this, not only do I help a bunch of clients that do it, I've actually been able to, speaking with some clients, forgive me for that, just had an internet malfunction. So all of this to say, with all of these clients that are looking, even people that haven't even considered rental properties, just having a discussion on what are the actual cost benefits of it, can be persuaded or at least are able to consider the possibility of creating this passive income. And I don't know anyone that's ever complained about passive income. So my encouragement to you guys is keep your heads up. If you're considering investing in real estate, feel free to send me a message. I'd love to start the conversation. We'll go grab coffee and talk further about it. There's huge potential. As promised, next week we're going to do a market update on what this past month has looked like, but also I want to give my insight on where I think the market's going to continue to go over the next year or so. So with that, I'll leave you. Take care, guys, and keep it real.